Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Okay, so I wanted to share some quick Disney news with y'all since we haven't done that in a few weeks. There are a few things that have been going on that I just wanted to talk through. So the first thing that I saw that I was super excited about, I don't know if y'all listened to our episode most recently with our cousin Latoya. We talked about how we feel like Holes is a very underrated movie. And then they went and announced that they are coming out with a reimagined Holes TV series that is ordered for Disney Plus. So the show's official logline states, in this reimagining of the beloved 1998 book, a teenage girl is sent to a detention camp where the ruthless warden forces the campers to dig holes for a mysterious purpose. So I am super pumped about this show. Holes is definitely an underrated movie in my opinion, and I'm curious how the twist will be with it being girls in the camp instead of boys, but I'm excited for a new spin and excited to see a series come out of it instead of just another movie. So that's something to look forward to. Also, currently the Run Disney Week is going on while I'm recording this. So by the time this episode comes out, it will be over. But they did go ahead and announce run dates for the fall and next year as well. So at Disney World, the 2025 Disney Wine and Dine Half Marathon Weekend will be October 23rd through the 26th, 2025. They also announced the 2026 Walt Disney World Marathon Weekend, which will be January 7th through the 11th, 2026. The Disney Princess Half Marathon will be February 26th through March 2nd. And then the Run Disney Springtime Surprise Weekend is April 16th through the 19th. They also did announce for Disneyland that their Halloween Half Marathon Weekend will be September 4th through the 7th, 2025. So if you're an avid runner, I know there's lots of Disney runners that go, especially for these races. Those dates are now out. And then I did want to just talk through some of the refurbishments and closings that have now started, as well as some announcements about construction and different things that are going on for some of the things that they announced at D23, but as well as just general, refurbishment things. Epcot went ahead and started the Grand Fiesta Tour refurbishment. So that is now totally drained. It's been closed now since Monday, January 6th, and is expected to reopen on March 15th, 2025. So if you're going to Epcot before March 15th, which my daughter and I will be, just know that Grand Fiesta Tour will not be open. Sometimes they do reopen early, but as of right now, they are not expected to reopen until March 15th. Now, Dinoland has also taken a few changes in the last few weeks as well. They did file permits for demolition, and according to WDW Magic, the permit entails demolition specifically for the Triceratops Spin, as well as the Fossil Fun Games area in the Chester and Hester's Dinorama, which are both set to close with Chester and Hester's Dinosaur Treasures on January 13th. So by the time this comes out, they will be closed. So plan accordingly if you have an Animal Kingdom trip. However, the actual dinosaur ride, as well as the Boneyard Playground, Dino Bite Snacks, Trilobites, and the Restaurantosaurus will remain open. They haven't announced closure dates for everything yet, but they did say Dinosaur will stay open through all of 2025. So that's super exciting. There's still reasons to go over to the dinosaur area. If you've never played in the Boneyard Playground and you have young kids, it's a great area to just kind of relax for a little bit, let them run around and get some energy out. So that will still be open for a little while yet. They did also begin construction on the exterior of Spaceship Earth at Epcot, and this is likely where that new Spaceship Earth lounge is going to go. It was where the former private corporate lounge was, and it's supposed to be opening, it says, prior to summer 2025. So that's fairly soon. So we'll be keeping an eye on the dates for that. Now, Big Thunder Mountain did also close. We're going to talk about that in this episode with Dad on the podcast when we go through Frontierland, but that is now closed and will not be reopened until 2026. That's all the news I have for now. Go ahead and keep listening to enjoy the rest of the show today, talking through Frontierland. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us back. I have my dad back here with me again to discuss our Frontierland section of Parks of the Present Magic Kingdom. So last week we talked about Adventureland and we got into each and every attraction, as well as the restaurants, the character meet and greets, and ranked our favorites. So if you didn't get the chance, go back and listen to that episode. But today we have dad here again to talk about Frontierland, which is another really fun classic Magic Kingdom section of the park. A smaller section as well. I feel like this does not have as many attractions for the amount of space that it takes up. But it has some great attractions for sure. And we kind of tied Tom Sawyer Island in with this because that's where the rafts take off. So I'm kind of starting with the newest attraction, actually, because we're kind of working our way clockwise around the park. So if you're exiting Adventureland and going into Frontierland, you come right out by what used to be Splash Mountain and is now Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So Dad has not been on this yet. I just went on this for the first time with Regan in December during our challenge. This is one of the rides that does have a height requirement for kids. So it is a 40-inch height requirement. And so you just have to keep that in mind. I know with it now being rethemed to Princess and the Frog, a lot of younger kids really want to go on it. As somebody who's been on both, if you've been on Splash Mountain but have not yet been on Tiana's, Regan and I talked about this in an old versus new a couple episodes ago of pros versus cons. So I won't dwell too much on the past because I was a huge Splash Mountain fan and loved it a lot. But this ride is definitely not as scary as Splash Mountain as far as the theming. I think when you're going up the big hill on Splash Mountain and they're acting like they're gonna skin Briar Rabbit, it was as a kid it was a little terrifying, but this is much more fun, lighthearted. It's like exciting to go down the bayou, and so it doesn't seem as scary, but that drop is still just as intense. Same track, same ride. And we talked a lot in our Parks of the Past episode before with Magic Kingdom about Splash Mountain, but Tiana's Bayou Adventure just recently opened this year, or well, I guess last year. Now we're in 2025, but June 28th, 2024. So just a little over, or about 6 months ago, a little over 6 months ago. And this project was led by the Imagineer senior creative producer, Charita Carter, but they also integrated the Imagineer Tony Baxter, who is huge on the Splash Mountain project. He's a very familiar name that you'll hear about quite a few times in these episodes, but he returned as a creative advisor for the ride, which makes total sense since this was one of his he was the, brains behind the operation of Splash Mountain. So to prepare for the attraction, the Imagineering team went on several research trips to Louisiana. They went to the French Market, to the bayous, they went to the Mardi Gras, and they kind of used all of that to bring back ideas of what to theme this attraction. Something that I learned that I did not know about this attraction or about the music in general used in the Princess and the Frog movie is that a lot of the songs were written by a very famous writer for other Disney and in general music. Do you know who, Dad, wrote a lot of the songs? This surprised me.
I probably, once you tell me, I'll probably be like, oh wow, but no, not off the top of my head. No,
I
I
didn't
don't
know
know.
this either. So it was Randy Newman.
Oh my gosh, from
I
Toy
know.
Story fame, huh?
Toy Story, yes,
Short
Toy
people.
Story. So, yes, short people.
Yeah.
You've got a
Oh
friend in
wow,
me. All
I
these
didn't know that.
amazing
Yeah.
songs. Me
Wow.
either. So I guess he wrote Down in New Orleans. He wrote Almost There. He wrote Dig a Little Deeper. Gotta Take You There. All these songs for the movie, which were used in the ride. And then there was a new song created for the ride called Special Spice, which was written by PJ Morton. But the attraction is basically set a year after the movie, The Princess and the Frog, and Tiana is trying to create this employee-owned food co-op called Tiana's Foods. It's built on a salt dome that she purchased, and they're trying to host this celebration for the people of New Orleans. And she realizes that her celebration is missing a band, so she needs everybody's help to find a band. And so she and Lewis, the alligator from the movie, take a trip down the bayou to search for other critter musicians. I have to say, without getting too into it, the theme to me falls short. I feel like the movie is really great, has a lot of great music, has a really great villain, and they could have done a better job incorporating all that into the theming. But the animatronics are very high tech. They're very interactive. They're timed, so you have to hit a certain point and they start again. It's not just on a loop, which has caused a lot of issues for the attraction, constantly shutting down, breaking down, having to reset the animatronics. So I'm curious how that will work out long term, but it's had a lot of issues in the initial launch of it. And this is a ride that has a virtual queue still as of right now at Disney World. I think at Disneyland they already got rid of it. But you also can buy a Lightning Lane, not individual, but as part of your Lightning Lane choices. And they do have some drops throughout the day as long as things are going fine with the ride. So it is something to consider if you're wanting to ride this ride. You need to either get in the virtual queue or purchase Lightning Lane Multipass so that you can ride it. That's the only way. There is not a standby like regular queue for this ride. That's the only way to do it. But yeah, so it's a little bit about this. It is also at Disneyland. Nowhere else has this attraction as of yet. It'll be interesting to see what other places do, but it was an interesting addition. Anything else to add about that, Dad? I know you haven't been on it yet, so it's a little different.
I haven't. I was a big Splash fan. I think I went on your first ride on Splash Mountain when you were
Yeah,
what, at 6?
six. Yeah, I think I was six.
I think we have a photo pass or whatever that's called, the photo of us going
Yeah,
down, and you look like you were very terrified.
yeah,
But
I
it's a
think I was.
five-story flume drop. It's one of the highest flume drops, I think in the country at the time, but I don't know if it still is. But uh, yeah, and I'm fine with the change as long as they've done a really good job with it. I'm sure the animatronics and things like you said have been enhanced, and they'll probably get the bugs out of it eventually. That stuff always happens with a lot of these new rides in the beginning. But no, I'm glad it's still there. Glad they didn't tear it down. I'm glad we still
Yeah,
have a pretty cool flume ride in Magic Kingdom, because that's a pretty cool. Just the track of the flume is really super cool. So
it is cool. Yeah, very cool. And then moving over to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, this is another favorite attraction. It's a really cool roller coaster. It is a 40-inch height requirement as well. And this was not one of the opening day attractions either. It came later. It opened September 23rd, 1980. So I guess in the first instance of its current form, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was another creation of Tony Baxter. So same guy that worked on Splash Mountain, and this was kind of his baby at all of the different parks. So this ride took inspiration from the hoodoos of Utah, and he kind of brought the Old West to life in this attraction that gave them this experience as that you get on a train into the frontier of the 1800s, and it's a really neat ride. It is a good, at the time, I think this was many kids' first roller coaster, like real roller coaster. I think it was mine. But it is pretty intense. For it's no upside down or anything like that, but it goes pretty fast, has some pretty tight turns. And as a kid with a lap bar, if you're with an adult, for sure, you're going to get a little bit of air. I remember getting quite a bit of air as a kid riding with you, because you just have, a little more space to fly up basically.
right,
Um, and then this attraction was initially supposed to debut at Magic Kingdom, and then the project was paused because they wanted to focus on Pirates of the Caribbean, and then again wanted to focus on Space Mountain. And so they didn't actually even start construction for this until 1977. And so then actually Anaheim Disneyland beat Disney World to it, and they opened theirs in 1979, so 1 year before Walt Disney World in 1980, which was interesting to hear that it was supposed to be first at Disney World, but it wasn't. Did you, so you, when you went to Disneyland, this was not open then, because it was
oh no,
79.
no, yeah,
Yeah,
this was
much
yeah, I was there in
later.
'70. Yeah, that was like 10 years later that Big Thunder showed up. Then no, I first time I rode this was at the Magic Kingdom, and I've always liked the ride. I think the ride is the theming alone. Tony Baxter and his theming with Splash, and of course he got probably is like you said is tied in with the Tiana at Bayou Adventure also. But the theming, and Disney's known for the theming, I get it. But Tony Baxter on those two rides to me, it was just over the top. The queue is
Yeah.
cool. All the little when you're riding on Big Thunder, all the different little I think there's a goat somewhere where there's
Yeah.
you're dipping down all these little things that in the beginning, the first time you ride it, you're kind of hanging on for dear life, like, oh, this is, I think it only goes like 30 miles an hour, but there's a lot of dips and everything, and
Dips.
like I said, tight turns, um, but once you ride it a few times, start looking around, and there's all these little things, and Disney's just known for that, putting just plussing an attraction and just doing all these little vignettes here and there, and different things that are going on, and yeah, I love it. I've always loved it, and I heard it's closing down here for a refurb for about a year. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yep. So that's definitely one of the things that I was going to touch on. It is closing, which really stinks because this was Eileen's first big roller coaster besides Seven Dwarfs, but I think she actually did this first and she was obsessed. She wanted to go on, I think she went on 3 times in one night. And it was at the Halloween party. And so they also said, you want to go on again? We were just sitting there. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, ugh. I was like, so are done.
Right,
Luckily
right.
her Uncle Regan and Aunt Steph took her on one of the times because I needed a break, but she loves it. And so it's going to be closed when I take her in March, for her birthday.
Oh,
But yeah, it's closing on January 6th, so tomorrow, and it will reopen again in 2026. And all they've said is it'll have a little bit of new magic. So I think the track is getting a total refurb,
yes,
making it
yes,
smoother.
yep.
But wait times were up to 80 minutes this week because people are trying to get their last ride. And so tonight's the last night, actually. We're recording this a little early, on January 5th. But yeah, tonight's it. So people are getting their last ride in before they
Wow.
redo it. But I'm curious if they're going to that's another, as a kid, I remember very long queue that can get hot in the summer. And so it's covered, but it's hot. And so I wonder if they're going to do something more interactive in the queue or something for people to do or look at because you can look out and you can see the ride and that's cool. But as a little kid, if you're waiting 80 minutes, it's nice. It'd be nice if they had more theming like Peter Pan and their queue and how they made it much more interactive and indoors and air conditioned. I don't know if they'll do all that, but if they could do something else in the queue, that would be nice. Um, but I did ride this at Disneyland. I don't remember a ton of difference. I know it is different. Actually, the Walt Disney World track, according to something I read, is about 25% larger. Or the space. Yeah, the track. Yeah. So the track is about 25% larger than Disneyland. Um, but I'm hoping that will be open when we head to Anaheim this summer because it's definitely a favorite. But it also is so Disneyland, Disneyland Paris, and Disneyland Tokyo. Um, as Big Thunder. But then in Hong Kong, they never got their own Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, but they do have their own Runaway Mine roller coaster, and they called it Big Grizzly Mountain Runaway Mine Cars. And this is another really great behind the attractions episode on Disney Plus, and Tony Baxter himself talks a lot in the episode about why that was, and I can't remember the exact details, but there was a reason that they didn't want to call it Big Thunder in Hong Kong, and so they kind of made their own thing. But each of the attractions in the different parks have a little bit of differences, and make it kind of unique. And I can't remember which park it is, but one of them, you actually go underwater, and the whole thing looks like it's in the middle of a river or a body of water, the whole ride, and then you come back under the water to get off the ride, and it's really, really cool.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
but he had his hand in every single Big Thunder ride around the globe, which is
Oh,
awesome.
very cool.
So he was a big part of that for sure. And then another attraction, the Tom Sawyer Island rafts, and then Tom Sawyer Island itself. So this debuted May 20th, 1973. And at Disneyland, it opened 1 year after Disneyland opened. It had a distinction of being the only attraction totally designed by Walt Disney. So I guess it was presented to him. He loved the idea. They had this whole plan, and then he took it home like days before the construction was supposed to start and totally scrapped it and reimagined everything, created all these coves and the, different fun little things that it's known for today was all him, which is really cool. It opened at the Magic Kingdom in 1973, And then in 1995, to promote the film Tom and Huck, which is one that I love with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, it was briefly named Tom and Huck Island, but it changed back to Tom Sawyer Island shortly after. Um, One difference about the Magic Kingdom version is that it used to have, which we talked about in our first episode with you, Aunt Polly's Dockside Inn, which had snacks and desserts. But because it's a weird location on the island, it doesn't get a ton of traffic. It closed in the late 90s. Vending machines were put there instead. But sometimes Aunt Polly's does reopen when it's really busy, but not very often at all anymore. I don't think it's reopened since COVID. I think that's correct. But a lot of times during the holidays or like really busy times, they would reopen it over there when they'd have more foot traffic. But I
Yeah, it was
remember
a nice
going,
place. Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say we did bring you kids there uh, back in the probably late 90s, early 2000s. Um, Anytime we went over there, we'd stop there, get ice cream or something. It was kind of nice because you're sitting kind of like on a little, not a pier, but kind of like a little dock that kind of sticks out a little bit. And there's some tables there, and there's hardly any. You're right. There's hardly anybody there, but that was the nice part about it. You kind of
Yeah.
get away from the crowd. In the Haunted Mansion, you can see and you can look across the Frontierland, and the riverboat would be cruising by. It's just kind of a place to hang out and take a break. But we did that a handful of times when you guys were young.
Yeah, I remember going over there as a kid. I remember the suspension bridges, the barrel bridge, different little fun things, the caverns, the little caves for
Yeah,
sure. And they, I guess, have had some fun little things like over the last later years since we were grown up, but they had something called a white paintbrush scavenger hunt where six paintbrushes left over from Tom whitewashing the fence, which is obviously a huge part of, the story of Tom
right.
Sawyer. They were scattered around the island, and so returning a paintbrush to the cast members would give you a fast pass for a Frontierland attraction, which is really cool. But they closed it, down after a little while because I think it just wasn't super popular. But that's a kind of, neat thing to do. Um, and then there's also Fort Langhorne, which had at the time there's restrooms back there, but there were also like where you could shoot little, like not really, but like pretend pistols, and the riverboat would kind of come around. And um I don't remember what else was back there other than that. You could climb through the fort, obviously.
Yeah, you could climb up on the upper deck, and they had the guns. That made a noise, like an electronic noise, like it sounded firing, they were
Yeah.
basically rifles, and they were looking out through like little rifle slots like you'd have in a fort back in the day. And then there's this one little like escape tunnel that was down toward the bottom that you could sneak through. It's real short, but you'd pop out right down by the river, and it takes you right over to the some of the barrel bridges that you'd go on, and
Okay.
they would be like you try to kind of work around that way. It's like a little uh, tunnel that a lot of people didn't know about, but it was designed for guests. It wasn't some like custodial tunnel or something you shouldn't be in.
Yeah.
But I remember taking you guys through there a few times because I was into exploring and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, I do. I remember there were a lot of cool little, quote unquote secret things. And it was always like a little bit of a fun, like mystery to go over there and do some unique stuff. So I definitely remember that. But obviously, this will all be going away as they expand for Cars Land. So it was announced in August that Tom Sawyer Island, along with Rivers of America, will be gone soon, to make the expansion for the Cars franchise area. They do also have a Tom Sawyer Island at Tokyo Disneyland, which I thought was interesting, and obviously at Disneyland in Anaheim. And then moving to the last attraction in the Frontierland area, which is Country Bear Jamboree. This was also an opening day attraction. And kind of the background of this was that it was one of the last attractions that Walt Disney had helped develop. The idea for this bear band attraction first came about after the 1960 Winter Olympic Games, which I guess Walt Disney kind of orchestrated. And so, following the Olympics, he was inspired to develop a ski resort in California. But the project then got assigned to Imagineer Mark Davis, and he worked with Albertino to select music for the show. They used this composer, conductor, Disney legend Bruns to conduct the Country Bear Jamboree soundtrack, and they ended up obviously nixing the ski resort. And he said, "I still want to do this bear show."
Right.
So they decided to keep it. It did debut well after Walt's death, but came to Magic Kingdom first, which I thought was interesting. And it was an e-ticket attraction at the time, which indicates how popular they thought that it was going to be. But it was very popular, I guess. And so then it was added to Disneyland. So the Country Bear Jamboree was the very first attraction to debut in Disney World and then be copied to other parks. Usually it was vice versa from California over. Um, but
Sure.
the Disney World Grizzly Hall Theater is what it's called. It holds 350 guests. There are 24 audio animatronic figures, including 18 bears. And it has had minimal changes. They've had some sideshows for the holidays and different things have updated, but really it stayed in its true form until recently when they just totally closed it, reimagined it. It just reopened July 17th, 2024, and it's apparently totally different, which I have not been in there since it was Country Bears, but this is another one that I'm like, man, maybe I need to go in there with Eiley. But we went on this quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit, but I mean, often enough that I remember it pretty well, the original songs and stuff.
Yeah, it's something. It's a lot of cheesy humor. I got a kick out of it just because of that. But and you and Regan when you were little, it's a fun place to take a family, little kids, small kids. And then it just kind of since it's been around for so long, it's like you got to go to it every so often just to check it out. I did look at the YouTube video of it just before we are meeting tonight and watched it with my wife and
Oh, the
the
new one?
animatronic. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, cool.
and uh, TPV vids or whatever. I don't know. They do a real nice job showing everything. And Melvin, Max, and Buff on the wall, that are talking. That
Yeah.
heads the buffalo. They actually are singing along with a lot of the songs and everything. All the animatronics are all brand new. They're all other ones must have been. I don't know if they scrapped them or whatever, but they're brand new with all the new technology. The songs, I don't think there's anything that's real similar as far as there's a lot of the same Big Al's there and the three bears that come down out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
I think they're from Florida. I don't know. I don't remember. But and a lot of them are singing like Disney songs, like real
That's what
Disney
I've
songs.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it terrible? No, I thought it was actually very well done. I think the show was like 11 minutes. Um, but yeah, it was well done. It's a little different than the original, but that was probably the intent, and I think people will enjoy it. I don't know if it's going to be people wanting to, have some big backup line or paying extra money to go see
Yeah.
it, like some of these other rides that people pay extra money for. But yeah, it's. I thought it was really good. I think it's really well done, and I'm glad they're keeping it around.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool to hear that they, redid it because it was a little, I mean, there were all original songs and stuff that they sang before, or at least that I remember. There was no
Yeah,
repeat Disney songs and stuff. So it was interesting as a kid, but I feel like getting Disney songs in there will get like, people into it that know all that. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see what it's like when we go in March. I'm going to try to do it with her if she'll let me. And then at Disneyland, they debuted this March 24th, 1972, but then it closed September 9th, 2001 to make way for Winnie the Pooh. So that's where their Winnie the Pooh attraction was. So unlike ours, which got swapped Toad for Pooh, this got totally demolished for Pooh over in Disneyland. Country Bears did.
right.
Um, and one of the stories that I thought was kind of fun that I read about Country Bear Jamboree is that it was called Walt's Last Laugh. And they called it that because they were presenting the concept art to him. It's one of the last things that Walt Disney actually had a chance to see before he passed away. And when they showed it to him, they said that he actually like belly laughed so hard. So they called it Walt's Last Laugh, which is kind of morbid and sad, but
But
I did think that was interesting. And this is another one that is at Tokyo Disneyland. I'm like, huh, interesting. All these things that I would think are not like Country Bears in Tokyo, but I guess they've got it over there in Disneyland. Um, and then character meet and greet, the only real thing in Frontierland that they have is to meet the country bears. So you can meet Big Al, Shaker, and Wendell. And they still have that going on in Frontierland, but that's really the only meet and greet that they have left over there. So to jump into the restaurants for Frontierland, there's not many there either, but there are a couple quick service options. So a couple of like kiosk type things and then a quick service. But Golden Oak Outpost is the first one when you're walking from Adventureland to Frontierland. This was previously known as the McDonald's fries cart. Now they serve shrimp gumbo with sweet potato fries. They also have this hot honey chicken with sweet potato fries, chicken nuggets tossed in hot honey sauce. And then they also, this is where they do Tiana's famous beignets. So this is not a place that I have been to recently, but we definitely went to the McDonald's fry cart back in the day. But I don't know if you've had any of that. It doesn't sound like anything up your alley.
No, I've never. I know right where it is. It's like right at the transition between Adventureland and Frontierland, as you're kind of going around the corner there. But yeah, I remember when it was McDonald's. I think we got fries there at something at one point. We're always like, what's the point of that?
Yeah, in the
I don't
park.
even understand why it's there, frankly. But there must be some people that like getting, their hot honey chicken or their shrimp gumbo or whatever they're
Yeah.
getting. So.
Yeah. And then there also is a kiosk called Westward Ho, and this just serves more like snacky things. They have powdered sugar cinnamon donut holes, which sound delicious, breakfast sandwiches for that morning time, and then they switch over to like corn dogs, jalapeno poppers, like that kind of snacky food. And then we have Pecos Bill Tall Tale Inn and Cafe, which is quick service. So as we talked about in the last episode, Dad was saying there's a little kind of quiet area in the back of this restaurant that's a good place that's air conditioned to kind of sit back there and chill if you need a little break. But this is priced around like $14.99 and under per adult, kind of depending on what you order. But they have a lot of like Western, Mexican, Tex-Mex type food, nachos, fajitas, chili con queso burgers. And we've eaten here a couple of times over the years, but it's not somewhere that we super frequent in Magic Kingdom. But you said you guys have gone there quite a few times, or at least snuck in
Yeah.
there to sit.
Yeah, it was a go-to place for us when it was more of a burger joint.
Yeah,
And they used to have the fixing bar, where you could put all this stuff on your hamburger.
yeah,
And I know my wife, during again being a foodie, she really enjoyed getting her burger done with completed with all kinds of good fixings. So, but now that they've changed it over to the whole kind of the Tex-Mex and I'm listening to the fajita platter and beef nachos and all that. I mean, I like that stuff, but it's not something that I would, run across the park to go eat at this point. Um,
yeah,
and the theming there is they had
fine.
one big dining area that was really crowded. And remember, it was
Yeah,
just really noisy. And there's, I don't know, Disney tries to keep up with keeping the tables clean, but I always walk back there going, okay, I don't really want to eat back here. It just didn't seem very
yeah.
clean, So, and I think there were bathrooms down there too, right inside the restaurant, if I remember right. So,
Yeah, yep. And then another thing I wanted to mention about Frontierland was that this is, if you are a parade person, this is where the parade starts. So it pops out kind of right next to Splash Mountain. If you're looking at Splash Mountain on the left, right near that fry cart, or now that it's called the Golden Oak Outpost, kind of between that and Splash Mountain, there's an area where that's where the parade will begin. So if you're looking to catch the parade at the beginning and then kind of hop into Adventureland or go over to Big Thunder or Splash, that is a great place to park yourself. You have to get there early to get a good spot for the parade, but it's a great place to kind of park yourself for whatever parade you're watching that day because it will start there and then end on Main Street. So that is another kind of tip for y'all planning your trips. So as far as ranking attractions for Frontierland, there's really only the four attractions. But Big Thunder would be my number one. Tiana's following shortly after. I guess I would put Country Bears third and Tom Sawyer Island fourth. Those two, I don't know that I necessarily have a neither here nor there of the order, but Big Thunder is definitely my favorite Frontierland attraction. I think it fits the theming perfectly. It's a really fun coaster. It's a good length of a coaster. And so I'm curious to see what they do with these updates with it. What would you rank, do you think?
yeah, Big Thunder would be first and foremost. And it's kind of a toss up. If it was still Splash Mountain, I might lean over to Splash Mountain. And nothing against the whole Tiana thing. I just wish they wouldn't have changed that out. That's just my own personal take on that. It's been there for so long, and I just enjoyed it. So I would have to say a Big Thunder, Splash, and I guess um, the island, Tom Sawyer's Island. Um, and then I guess what was our last one that we had? Was it just
And
the three?
Country Bears.
Oh, Country Bears. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll put Country Bears ahead of Tom Sawyer Island.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, it's kind of a toss up, neither really here nor there with those two. Okay, and then for the old versus new, since you did just recently watch the Country Bear Jamboree reimagined, what would you pick between the new one and the one that was there? Do you think the new one is better? Do you feel like the old one was better as a classic, or what would be your preference?
Again, the old one was better as a classic, I think, because I saw it so many times as a kid with you guys when you were kids, with Makayla when she was younger, other granddaughter. Yeah, so and I don't know, I like the jokes. Uh, I like Big Al and the song he sang. Now you have basically the similar characters or same characters. They're dressed differently and everything, which is fine. But they're singing Disney songs kind of like with a country twang to them.
Yeah.
That's what kind of makes it funny. I mean, it's funny. It's people are cracking up and everyone knows the song, so that's great. And you know the moose and the buffalo and the deer are all singing on the wall, and that's kind of fun too. But I still prefer personally the old one.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I'm curious when I go see the new one in March what I'll think, but I have a feeling that I'll lean towards the old, but we'll see what happens. And then for our trivia question for Frontierland, what year did Splash Mountain open? Was it 1971, 1989, 1992, or 1982?
89.
89. Okay. I'm going to say 82. It was 92. Is that right?
Oh, really?
I'm gonna look it up. I feel like this
Wow,
quiz is wrong.
I always thought it was 89 for some reason. I remember Big Thunder was 1980, but I
Hmm.
thought for sure it was 89.
No,
Okay.
so October 2nd, 1992.
92. Okay.
It
I
had a
did I
soft opening July 17th, 1992. But yeah, wow, that seems a lot later than what I
Yeah.
thought.
It's a little later than I thought too, but and I might be mixing that up with Hollywood Studios. I think Hollywood Studios opened in 89, I'm
Okay.
thinking.
Yes, yes, you're
And,
right. 89. Yeah.
and Animal Kingdom was 95. So okay, yeah. Maybe I got it mixed up with that. Who knows?
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dad, again for joining us for this episode of the Parks of the Present. We'll have to get into Liberty Square next time. I think, we talked about this earlier, and you said these three are your favorite sections of the park between Adventureland, Frontierland, Liberty Square, and have some of your favorite attractions, obviously. So, and
Yes, hands
restaurants
down.
as we get into Liberty Square.
Sounds good. I look
Yeah,
forward to doing
great.
it.
All right,
Okay.
thanks so much. All right, we'll catch you all next week. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.